Now, today's word is a big one. Jealousy. Oh, yes, I'm going there. Jealousy. And today's lesson is going to be taken from 4 books. And I am going to stay within my 30 minutes today, no matter what. So let's get started. We're going to be in Genesis 4, Exodus 20, Psalms 119, and Hebrews 13 and 5. Now, the good news is I'm only looking at one verse in Exodus, Psalms, and Hebrews. So the bulk of what we're going to talk about is in Genesis 4. So let's start there. Genesis 4. Now, when I say the word jealousy and I say Genesis 4, some of you already know where I'm going with this. It's the passage involving Cain and Abel. Many people know that that was the first murder in the Bible. Many people know that Cain and Abel were brothers, but many people, and that one murdered the other, but many don't know why, and many forget why. The root of the murder was jealousy. So we'll be reading, and I'm going to break this into 3 parts. I'm going to read Genesis verse 1 through 7, then 8 through 12, then 11 through 12 so basically it's the first 12 verses divided into 3 of the 4th chapter of Genesis. Verse 1, Adam knew his wife, Eve, and she conceived and bare Cain and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. And she again bare his brother, Abel. And Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was the tiller of the ground. And in the process of time, it came to pass that Cain brought the fruit of the ground as an offering unto the Lord. And Abel he also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and his offering. Verse 5, but Cain, unto him and his offering, God had not respect. And Cain was very wroth, angry, and his countenance fell, facial expression. And the Lord said to Cain, why art thou wroth, angry? And why is thy countenance fallen? Pick your face up off the floor, Cain. What's going on? What's wrong with you? And here is the meat. If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted? If you do well, won't you also be accepted? And if you do well not, sin lieth at your door, and unto thee shall be its desire, and thou shalt rule over him. Okay, he was giving him a glimpse of what could be. Now, right there, let's just take a look. The Bible does not tell us what was wrong with Abel's offering. When I read it, I say, well, Abel was a keeper of sheep. Cain was a tiller of the ground. Abel's gift was of the, it says the fatling. He bought the first fruit and the fatling, a healthy one, as a sacrifice. Cain, it just says, Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. There was no description of what Cain actually offered unto the Lord from the ground. But it doesn't say it was fresh fruit. It doesn't give any descriptions positive like the Bible does for Abel's gift. Abel's offering, the Bible uses 2 positive descriptions. But Cain's description of his offering, there is no description, neither positive nor negative. But we know that something wasn't right because God only accepted, and actually it says, had respect unto Abel's offering, unto Abel and his offering. But to Cain and his offering, he had none. So that tells us there was something wrong with Cain's offering. It was not acceptable unto God. Reminds me of that verse in Romans 12:1. Present your body a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God. Many people are presenting their bodies as sacrifices unto the Lord. They're sacrificing their time, their effort, their energy, but are they submitting and sacrificing holy and acceptable sacrifices unto the Lord? Apparently, Cain did not. But God gave him the remedy. He said, listen. Now, what happened is, as with all children, one does well, one does not so well. One gets a reward, the other doesn't. We're human. Naturally, our emotions are going to rise up. His emotion rose up, his facial expression changed. And the Lord asked him, why are you angry? Why are you wroth? Why are you angry? Why are you filled with wrath? If you do well, won't you also be accepted? Something in this didn't add up. We don't get a clue as to why. And whenever that happens for me as a Bible enthusiast, I'll call myself, I'll say that, by no means a expert, but a Bible enthusiast, as a Sunday school teacher, workshops and things from the Bible since the early 90s. I have come to learn that if it's not in the Bible, I don't spend a lot of time wondering and coming up with scenarios. I just move on, and I count it up to, it's not important. If it was important, God would have put it in there. So it doesn't matter what was wrong with his offering from the ground. It doesn't even matter what he offered from the ground. What matters is that it wasn't acceptable unto God. It did not give God a feeling of respect for him. But God told him what to do. If you do well, go back and do it again. Do it better. Go do a better job, Cain, and you will be accepted. But if you refuse to take heed to these words, then what does he say in verse 7? If you do not, sin lies at the door. Now we know sin had already come into the world, into the Garden of Eden, into this family through his father and mother who disobeyed God's word. So he was born in sin, the first one born into a sinful world. And then Abel was born into a sinful world. But here again is another example where two people under the same circumstances, that product of your surroundings theory, it can hold some weight, but it doesn't have to determine the course of the rest of your life. Yes, it holds some weight in your early upbringing. But here are two young men, both born into the same sinful world, under the same conditions. One does well, one does not. One is given instructions then on how he can go back and do well, and a warning. If you don't do well, sin is lying at your door and desires to have you, but you can have rule over it, Cain. You can have rule over your sin. Okay, we go to verse 8 through 12. And Cain talked with Abel. Now, he didn't talk back with God. He talked with Abel, and it came to pass when they were in the field, Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and slew him. So there you have it. Sin was at his door. He did not go back to the field. He was a tiller of the ground. He did not go back to the ground to do well. Instead, he went to his brother. While they were in the field, he killed him. And the Lord immediately, well, I'm not going to say immediately. The verse 9 says, and the Lord said unto Cain, where is Abel thy brother? And he said, I know not. Now he's lying. Am I my brother's keeper? Filled with sarcasm. And then verse 10, and he said, and then God said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood cries unto me from the ground. And verse 11 and 12. And now you are cursed from the earth, which hath opened her mouth to receive your brother's blood by your hand. You're cursed. So here's what his curse was. When you till the ground, it will not henceforth yield unto you, and you will be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth. Wow. Wow. Reminds me of our episode a few weeks ago on consequences. There are consequences, and God gave him the consequences. If you go back and do well, your consequence is you'll be accepted. If you don't, the consequence is sin, and it lies at your door, and it desires you. You can have rule over it, but it desires you. Instead, he chose to let sin have rule over him and went instead to his brother instead of going back to the field and killed his brother. And so now he has to live with these consequences. It's cursed. The word for today is jealousy. What do we do with jealousy? Just a few more verses. Exodus 20:17, just the verse in the 10 Commandments that says, thou shalt not covet, be envious of or jealous of thy neighbor's house, thy neighbor's wife, thy neighbor's manservant or his maidservant or his ox or his donkey or anything that is thy neighbor's. You're not supposed to be jealous of it. You're not supposed to covet it. Psalms 119 and 36, that's the chapter with 176 verses, the longest chapter in the Bible. We're at verse 36, Psalms 119. David, oh, his Psalms are so beautiful, so full of prayers and praises to the Lord. This one says, 119:36, incline my heart to thy testimonies and not to covetousness. Turn away my eyes from beholding vanity, verse 37, and quicken me in thy way. Here is David praying, help me. Don't let me become covetous. Let me instead focus on thy testimonies. Yes. And then finally, Hebrews 13 and 5. So we have an Old Testament and we have a New Testament. Let your conversation be without covetousness, and be content with such things as ye have. For he has said, I will never leave you or forsake thee. Now we have heard that part of the Bible verse quoted into eternity, into infinity rather. I will never leave you nor forsake you. How many times have you heard that Bible verse? How many times have you read or even known or realized that that's only the last stanza of a complete verse? See, it puts a different lighting on it, doesn't it? Now let's look at this again. Let your conversation be without covetousness, and be content with such things as ye have. For he has said, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. It puts that in a different light. Don't be covetousness. Don't let your conversation be without covetousness, and be happy with such things as you have. Why? Because God said, I'll never leave you nor forsake you. He's right with you and your covetousness spirit. He's right with you complaining and not being content in all that you have. I love the word of God. So when it comes to biblical principles and practical tips for perfecting your gift of writing and pursuing self-publishing, many, many times you will be faced with your feelings. You will be faced with your feelings of jealousy, of envy, of Why did that person's book go so well and mine only got 2 sales? You'll be faced with, why is she on book number 5 and I can't even finish my first manuscript? And you'll be faced with, why is he being invited to every platform known to God to speak about his book, and I haven't been invited even to my own people that know me's events? Why? What am I doing wrong? Why are they doing so well with their books and their publishing and their platforms, and I'm not? You will be faced with these feelings, with these thoughts. Why? Because you're human, just like Cain was. You're human. You were born in the same flesh he was. It's not about your feelings and your thoughts so much as it is what you do with them. My sister, for a while there, she doesn't say it so often anymore, but every once in a while she'll say, get over it, move on. And so sometimes you have to tell yourself that. You can't get stuck looking at somebody else's sacrifice, being jealous and envious. And the Bible uses the word wrath. His facial expression was like, he was not happy. And really, what it boils down to is Cain didn't have a real problem with Abel's sacrifice being acceptable. His problem was that his sacrifice wasn't. But his solution was to kill his brother, thinking that would kill the sacrifice. But really, it didn't. You still have an unacceptable sacrifice, Cain. By killing your brother, attacking him, that does nothing between you and God. That does nothing to make your sacrifice acceptable. And when you are faced with those feelings of jealousy and being so upset, you may not go out and kill Cain. Kill the Abel that you're jealous of, but you can kill them with your conversation. What does Hebrews 13:5 says? Let not your conversation be with covetousness. Why? Because God said, I'm with you always. I'll never leave you or forsake you. I'm here to help you. Stop focusing on what they're doing. You should be happy for their success, number one. The Bible says, rejoice with them that do rejoice. Yes. Yes. And weep with those that weep. Not weep for somebody rejoicing because you're jealous. So this topic first came up, I think it was 2 weeks ago. I was thinking about and praying about and meditating about what will my next topic be. And immediately this came to mind. So someone watching now or someone who's going to watch the feedback watch it, not feedback, but watch it at another time, is struggling with feelings of inadequacy. And what do you do with them when you feel inadequate, when you feel like you're not where everybody else is here and you're here? Really, what it is everybody else is probably here and you're here, but you got that grasshopper mentality that we talked about with the spies that Moses sent out. You're looking at the people and they look so big and you're feeling like I'm a grasshopper. And not only do you feel like you're a grasshopper, you say, then remember in Numbers, we looked at it, that they think you're a grasshopper too, and they're not even thinking about you really. But what do? You do what God told Cain. You go back and make yours acceptable. If you're weak in grammar, then you buy some grammar books and study them. You find a friend to help you. Could you read this? I'm struggling with this part. Could you read my book? It's not selling so well. I thought it was great, but I see other people on this topic. They're doing so great, but mine isn't. Could you read it and give me some feedback? Don't be afraid. If you're giving these books, give it to someone you trust, who's going to be honest, Now, maybe not brutally honest to the point where they're rude and not productive, but give it to someone whose opinion you trust, but who will give you honest feedback. This goes back to accountability partners, another earlier episode. You have to have a team. You can't do it alone. I started a group called Village Authors with this thought in mind. It takes a village. That's the lesson I've learned. It takes a village to become an author. It takes a village. And so who's in your village to help you make your offering sacrifice, make your sacrifice acceptable? Who's in your village that will give you honest feedback about your project? Now, not somebody that goes, well, I don't know why they're doing so good either. They probably ... going into judgment, right? You don't want that kind of accountability partner. You want someone who's going to lift you up, who's going to make you better, who's going to pull you out of that pity party and say, listen, I read it. You got a few errors in here. This section don't make no sense. I don't understand where you're going with this. Or somebody that just might say, you know what, there's nothing wrong with this book. It's great. Maybe you should look at your marketing, your advertising. Are you getting the word out? Maybe you should look at, now here are the practical tips, all right? Here are the practical tips. Please hear me. Maybe your cover is a turnoff. Maybe your artwork is not up to par. Maybe your cover doesn't, look professional. Maybe the people are confused about your title and your cover image and the content or what you say it's about. I have another thing I'm going to talk about in detail in a future episode. Uniformity of theme. Everything has to make sense. The book cover, the title, the content, the chapter titles, everything has to make sense. Remember the Sesame Street game? There were 4 squares, and they would say one of these things shouldn't be here, one of these things doesn't belong. Can you guess which thing doesn't belong here? Then our game will be done. Everything about your book has to make sense. 50 Minutes of Grace, the title, and other stories of God's undeserved favor. The back cover is explaining 50 Minutes of Grace is an account of 5 days. And the title you'll find out about. Sometimes, like with a movie, you'll find that you'll get a better explanation of the title when you start watching the movie, but it should be in there. The reason why it's 50 Minutes of Grace is not told on the back cover. That secret isn't given away until you get the book and you read inside. So you see 50, and then you see 5 decades, 5 specific days, but still you don't know, well, where did she get the 50 minutes from? You got to read the inside to find out. But it has to be cohesive. So rather than looking at someone else's success and being jealous and envious to the point that you kill them with your conversation, right? You kill their character, you kill their sacrifice, you kill them. Going against what Hebrews 13:5 says, let not your conversation be with covetousness. Okay, so before you do that, or instead of doing that, look again at your offering. Go back and look at your offering. There was a book, I didn't bring it in here. Oh, and I should have, because it so perfectly fits in with how I want to close. There was a book. My 3rd book, the writing was on the wall, Early Signs of Dating Violence. When I first published that book, it was a chapbook. It had a poem, it had a short testimony, that I glossed over. And then it had a whole lot of resource information on dating violence and dating awareness, dating violence awareness. That was 2013. I was so proud of myself. I did a chapbook, and I did it the old school way. I printed it all up on my computer and I went to Staples, and then it had the center was stapled in the middle, classic chapbook, and the cover was glossy and colored and beautiful. And I was so proud of myself. That was 2013. That was one of two chapbooks I did. But this one, 3 years later, when my employment, I changed, I left radio and began another career path. I was learning CreateSpace at the time. Now it's Kindle Direct Publishing, but I was learning Amazon's platform for publishing because my daughter was publishing her book. And when I saw how, it wasn't really, I won't say easy, but when I saw how I was able to learn, I decided to take the two chapbooks and upload them as perfect bound books, paperback books. And when it came to that chapbook, that I had one poem, one short testimony that I glossed over, and a whole bunch of resource information. That might be fine for a chapbook, but when you're trying to perfect your gift, you have to look at all angles. And as I began, reviewing and putting everything together to upload onto Amazon, God began dealing with me about that short testimony that I glossed over. And I couldn't ignore the nudging. It was something, just spirit was pricking me and nudging me. And finally, I started paying attention. And what the Lord said to me, he just shattered he didn't say what he said to Cain to me, but what he said was, go back and tell the whole story. I'm like, what? He said, go back and tell the whole story. In other words, here you are 3 years later doing all these pretty finishes and the cover is glossy and all this stuff, and now you're ready to upload it to Amazon, but your testimony is still unacceptable. You didn't tell the whole story. You didn't give me all the glory that I was due because you didn't tell the whole story. When you gloss over things, you're not telling the whole story. So that means God is not getting all the glory. That's what I got out of it for me, for what he said to me. Go back and tell the whole story. So I had to pull myself together and be ready to go there mentally, to go back and really, I had to dig up old diaries. I still have all my diaries from when I was 14 all the way up. So I had to go back and dig out my diaries and really read through, the girl I was then, what actually happened in that relationship with that dating violence, and face those old skeletons that was shut up in that closet. And I had to tell that whole story. I had to go back and do it again. And it was hard. And it took months. But I finally, it actually took more than months. It took a little bit more than a year before I was able to upload the complete, real, true, full story of what happened to me and how God blessed me. Even in my sin, in my sinful state, sin was at the door. Sin wasn't only at the door. I had opened the door and let sin in. But even then, he protected me, because we hear stories every day about how girls are killed by their boyfriends, how women are killed by their partners, their husbands. And I could have been one of those statistics, but I wasn't. But for the lesson we're talking about, instead of me being jealous of, oh, this one's telling her story about overcoming an abusive past, and look at her. She's getting all of these accolades, and why is my book not doing so well? Maybe it's because you need to go back and do it again. Maybe it's because you need to talk about myself. So I don't know what your challenges are with your books or your manuscript, or your feelings of people are doing so much better. But it always starts with looking within. Whenever we have a problem looking out at someone else's success, the real problem is with ourselves. We really have a problem with our success. And 9 times out of 10, there's something somewhere we can do to perfect that gift. And sometimes it's just about seasons. Sometimes it's just about seasons. It's just about, you have to wait for your season. Be not weary in well-doing. If you've gone back and you've looked at the progress, the process, and you perfected everything you know how, and you've done well, everything is well. You've dealt with your feelings of your issues with other people. The better than syndrome, the grasshopper syndrome. You've dealt with all that, and you've prayed over it, and you realize it's not about a them versus me. It's really about me, or how can I perfect myself? You've done all the work. You've done the legwork. You've done the hard work, and your product is still not doing well. Sometimes it's just not your season yet. But remember Galatians, be not weary in well-doing, right? Be not weary in well-doing. For in due season, you're going to reap if you faint not. So that is today's episode. I guess I'm just not going to be able to get under 30 minutes. I guess I could, but I don't know. I want to share one short poem with you as I close. And this is an old poem from back in the day. Well, if it's an old poem, then that means it was back in the day. See there how we talk? Now, when you write, you got to pick one or the other. You can't say both because they mean the same thing. When we talk, we have gift of gab, so we say the same thing more than once. But when you're writing, that's another tip. When you're writing, you got to pick one or the other. Either it was an old saying or it was from back in the day. Right? Okay. So I wanted to read you this poem. And this is from Word Beats. This is from the poem from it's called Word Beats. I'll show you the full cover. The Pulsations of a Young Poet's Heart. Word beats, like heartbeats, word beats. Pulsations of a Young Poet's Heart. And these are the poems that were written from 1978 to 1990 by yours truly. And here's an early lesson I learned in life. It's called And Stop There. I don't need the self-assurance physical beauty brings, and I don't need the self-confidence either. For the beauty of my words, when I read them back to me, gives me more faith and more confidence in myself than the reflection of a pretty face looking back at me in the mirror ever could. Now remember, this is the 20-something Patricia. But she says, so I will no longer sit and compare myself to those around me with pretty faces and gorgeous hair. I will dare to be at peace with my own beauty and stop there. That was an early lesson I learned. There's no need to compare yourself, whatever your issues, if it's a best-selling book versus your book, or if it's a pretty, versus your face. That was my issue back then. We all have issues, but I got to the point in life where I realized that I wasn't going to keep sitting around comparing myself to other people. I'm going to dare to be at peace with my own and stop there. And so I encourage you to do. Keep your eyes focused on your projects. When you look up and you see someone else's success, your first thought should be, all right, yes, that's great. Congratulate. Let your congratulations that you type on social media be for real. Let your comments that you put in people's sections when they're doing well be for real. Don't be, well, if I don't say something, someone's going to say something. So let me say congratulations. But really, I just want to know, how did she do that? How did he get that? And I'm still sitting here struggling. No, let it be for real. Rejoice with them that rejoice, for real. And then look at yourself. If that's what you want, you don't know what they went through to get that. Here you are judging them and all, and you have no idea what they went through. You think you know, but you have no idea what they went through to get what they had. You just don't understand why you don't have it too. So it still comes back to you. And I'm pointing it because it still comes back to us. We are our own worst enemy. So let's be obedient to God's advice to Cain. These case studies, as I like to call them, are beautiful because they can be applied to us at any time. 2021, now this happened Genesis 4, and we can take his lessons and look at his life, and we can apply the principles that God was trying to teach Cain to our lives right now in 2021. If you do not do well, won't you also be accepted? Go back and do it again. And if you go back and if you've done well, be not weary in well doing. In due season, you will reap. If you faint not, let no covetousness in your conversation be. Why? Because he said, I'll never leave you or forsake you. So instead of being covetous of someone else, since God is there with you, ask him, what can you do to perfect your gift? What can you do to perfect your gift? God, you gave me this gift. I don't think it's doing so well with it. He was a tiller of the ground, but he didn't do so well with his gift. Instead of protecting his gift, he tried to pollute someone else's by killing them. But it didn't, because centuries later, we're still talking about Abel and his acceptable, respectable gift. It didn't stop Abel's success all these years later. So we have to remember that and go back and do it again, just like I did. I had to be obedient and go back and write that book again and tell the whole story. And it was painful. It was painful, but I did it. I did it because God told me to do it. And I felt so bad when he told me to do it. I was like, oh man. I mean, I can't just get away with just, and I'm like, oh man, but I did it. And it didn't become a bestseller. It wasn't supposed to, but it has helped, that testimony, it has helped the girls, the young girls and the women that it's supposed to. And that's another lesson we have to learn. We may want something with our gift. There's nothing wrong with wanting it, but we have to always remember that everything is still within God's will. God's will wasn't for that book to become a bestseller at this time. But it didn't stop me from being obedient and doing it the right way. And I apply that verse to my life as well. Be not weary in well doing. In due season, I'm going to reap if I faint not. I've had a lot of thankful seasons, but I've learned that's not where you're going to do your reaping. You're not going to do reaping in a fainting season, right? You're going to reap in a faithful season. There's that word faith again. In a faithful season, you're going to reap if you faint not. So instead of fainting, have faith and be obedient to the voice of the Lord. Only you know what he's telling you to do or redo. So that's going to do it for today. I said that before. I'm just saying it again because I'm winding down. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and comment. And please remember to visit amazon.com/author/Patricia Middleton and purchase either Kindle or paperback. 50 Minutes of Grace. Help me celebrate God saving my life yet again from multiple blood clots in both lungs and more, because there are 5 testimonies in here. And the Kindle version is only $3.99. Okay. So that's going to do it. I'm going to stop saying that. I'm going to put a post-it up that says, don't say that's going to do it for today. So, excuse me. Thank you so much again for listening, and take care and be blessed. It's May 15th. It is getting nice outside. And I know the restrictions may be lifted here, there, and everywhere, but I want you to be safe. I want you to be wise. I want you to enjoy yourself and have fun, but please be safe. Please be well. Please be wise. Take care and God bless.